Tonight, a predator alert after a child abduction attempt in Melbourne's east. Victoria falling behind as Sydney reveals bold new plans to reopen even for the unvaccinated, and Qantas prepares for takeoff. Melbourne's doctors and pharmacies get cash to boost the vaccine rollout. First, the AFL Grand Final. Now Perth wants the Boxing Day test. TV heartthrob Lincoln Lewis opens up on a stalking nightmare. And Melbourne turns red and blue as the Demons plan a homecoming celebration.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell.
Good evening. Police are hunting a child predator after an abduction attempt in Melbourne's east. Melina Saris is in Doncaster East with details. And Melina, he tried to snatch a 9-year-old boy.
Yes, Mitch, and it certainly came as a shock to this family and to the community here. Parents are extremely concerned that something like this could happen in their neighbourhood at their local shops. Police are taking this matter extremely seriously. They have been doing patrols of the area this afternoon and they are working to identify this man as quickly as possible. A little boy playing hide and seek when a predator found him.
It could have been devastating.
We're treating it as an attempted child stealing and assault at this point.
The 9-year-old says this is the man who grabbed him on Saturday afternoon at the Tunstall Square shopping centre. The boy was hiding in a doorway waiting for friends to find him while his mum had a coffee nearby. The man approached him from behind, asked if he wanted to see his car and grabbed his arm. As he's brushed him off, he tried to grab his hand again and Dom's pushed him, maybe with his other hand, and run. He didn't look back, he just ran straight away.
We are concerned that this person's still at large and we don't want this to happen to anyone else.
The man had scratches on his face, a snake tattoo on his neck and a profanity inked on his left hand. Parents are urged to speak to their children about stranger danger. In this case, it may have saved this little boy.
I'm really proud of him. He's done exactly what we've spoken about.
Melina Saris, 7 News.
There are major COVID changes on the way for New South Wales, revealing dramatic moves to reopen even for the unvaccinated. It's another step ahead of Victoria, but Daniel Andrews says he won't be following Sydney's lead.
Tempting travellers, the flying kangaroo getting ready for takeoff.
We'll start flights like Melbourne to Ballina, which I think people in Victoria would like to get to a little bit of a sunny holiday.
From November 5, the world's second busiest route, Melbourne to Sydney, will reopen. Qantas and Jetstar will have 14 flights a day, with that number scaling up in the lead up to Christmas.
And we're hoping at Christmas we can get back close to that pre-COVID schedule.
Today, 787 cases in New South Wales, and freedoms are just around the corner.
It is just this week and next week that we have to hang in there for. We're nearly there.
Freedom Day is only a couple of weeks away.
Major restrictions ease when the state hits their 80% target in just over 2 weeks. 10 visitors to the home, pubs, all retail and gyms reopen. On December 1, at the 90% target, most restrictions fall away. Nightclubs reopen and masks are no longer required indoors. It's at this point that the unvaccinated are welcomed back into the community. In Victoria, almost the same number of new cases, but trailing behind in the vaccination race, and freedoms for the unvaccinated aren't a consideration.
Every dose of this matters. I'm not going to be saying to people, "I will just wait 5 weeks and you'll be able to have all the freedoms." No, that's not a guarantee at all here. We've not made that decision.
But Qantas have.
Qantas's policy will be on our aircraft, our duty of care to our passengers and to our employees, and that we will have for international the requirement that you need to be double vaccinated.
And Chanel Vella joins us now. Chanel, overseas travel is also part of this big plan.
Well, that's right. Qantas wants to start flying internationally by December 18, and they'll be looking to head to destinations such as Singapore, Japan, LA and London. But when they do fly to London, they'll be going via Darwin or Singapore, bypassing Perth because of WA's hard border stance. And like everything in this pandemic, nothing is guaranteed, so all tickets booked will be flexible when it comes to a date change. Mitch.
Chanel Vella, thank you. Doctors and pharmacies will be given extra money to supercharge the vaccine rollout in hotspot suburbs. As we heard, more than 700 new COVID cases across Victoria today, and most of them are younger people.
Congratulations, you're fully vaccinated. Awesome, thank you. Open today, this Faulkner School Clinic takes vaccines to the people. One of 10 pop-up sites in Melbourne's north, which has more than half our daily COVID infections. Hume locals are responding. Vaccination rates up 16% there in the past 2 weeks, the state's best.
So getting jabs in arms and little communities is vital.
Helped by messages like this in Arabic from RMH's Dr Ali Al-Jabouri, encouraging testing and vaccines. Hume has a large Muslim population, and across Melbourne, children are getting vaccinated quickly.
With a third, so 33% of children in that age group now having had their first dose.
GPs and pharmacies will receive financial grants to speed up the rollout, targeting doctors and pharmacists in Wyndham, Hobsons Bay, Brimbank, Melton, Hume, Moreland, Whittlesea, Darebin, Greater Dandenong, Casey and Cardinia. Money for staff and space.
I've had a couple of pharmacists put it to me that they haven't got enough room in their shop, but if they had a bit of help, then they could rent some space next door or just down the road.
Timed to coincide with a big jump in Moderna supply. 53% of Australia's vaccine doses are done by suburban doctors. The grants are from $4,000 to $10,000.
If you want some more advice, who better than your local health provider that you go to every day?
Another 38 COVID patients are in hospital tonight, an 11% jump in a day to 363 total. More than 3/4 of new infections are in people under 50, reducing the gap between Pfizer doses from 6 weeks to 3 or 4 could help slow that.
First dose really reduces the risk of symptomatic infection by only 33%. By the time they get the second dose, that's improved into the 80s.
Supply is still the speed hump.
It's got better over the last week. Let's hope we get the 4th week of October confirmed the same as the first 3, and then that'll give us an option.
And Blake Johnson joins us now. Blake, the curfew hours could change once daylight saving kicks in.
Well, it happened last year, Pete. Curfew was pushed from 8 p.m. till 9 p.m, shortly before daylight saving was introduced. This year, though, we are already at that 9 p.m. mark. The Premier was asked today if he'll consider delaying daylight saving until curfew finishes. He says that won't happen, but we may need to revisit the hours of curfew. Daylight saving starts this weekend.
Blake Johnson, thank you. Perth is basking in the glory of the AFL Grand Final and now wants another iconic Melbourne sporting event. It's putting up its hand to host the Boxing Day Test, saying it makes sense for the cleanest state to host the Ashes blockbuster.
It's successfully hosted the AFL Grand Final. Now Perth has eyes for our Boxing Day Test.
Well, we never thought we'd see an AFL Grand Final in Perth, so a Boxing Day Test in Perth would be an absolute dream come true.
Outrageous. Outrageous. What are Perth thinking?
Currently, the Perth Test is scheduled for mid-January, but with Victoria's COVID crisis, the WA Cricket Association wants the Melbourne Test pushed back to then, and it will take Boxing Day.
We're the cleanest state in Australia, so it makes sense to come here first.
I do want to be clear, we're not trying to steal the Boxing Day Test, but we are happy to make ourselves available if required.
The MCG's favourite son says it should only be considered if fans can't attend.
If there's no crowds, wouldn't you rather, for the players' sake, in front of 60,000 people at Optus Stadium? I reckon that'd be great.
Last year, crowds were capped at 30,000 a day. This year, some restrictions forecast.
We will have people locked out of venues and events like the Boxing Day Test if they haven't had 2 jabs.
Ironically, Boxing Day's most famous highlight from a proud West Australia.
He's bowled him! He's bowled him! The last ball of the day!
I spoke to Dennis Lilly today by phone from his property in rural Western Australia. His response to all this: the Boxing Day test must be played at the MCG. Nick McCallum, 7 News.
Healthcare workers have gathered to protest against mandatory vaccinations. Their peaceful demonstration came as an accused ringleader of a much more violent protest faced court.
He's appeared at many demonstrations before, like this one in March. Police say he's one of the masterminds behind the mass protest in Richmond 9 days ago.
My name is Harrison McLean.
Now police have charged the 25-year-old from Bayswater with incitement. His website today asking followers for cash, as he says his legal battle now begins to continue the fight for freedom in Victoria.
The people of Melbourne and Australia are not going to sit down and continue to take these endless lockdowns and restrictions.
Others continued the fight today, a silent protest of what's said to be healthcare workers, concerned that vaccination is mandated across their industry. By October 15, they all need to have had one dose or provide evidence of an appointment, or they can't work. This woman says she's been a mental health nurse for 35 years.
I'd lose my job on the 15th of October because all I want to do is wait. I just want to wait until 2023 and see what other vaccines might come out.
What's your concern?
My concern is it just hasn't been tested enough.
After less than 30 minutes, the group peacefully dispersed.
It is a bit nerve-wracking being in the playground with your kids and seeing 200 cops.
Large numbers of police were deployed across the city again, ready to respond if other protests popped up. The 8th consecutive day stretching their resources. As they patrolled, protesters promised more action. A trucking convoy set for early morning tomorrow. Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
The hunt continues for a lycra-wearing predator who stalked a woman on an eastern suburbs walking track. The 59-year-old victim was exercising on the Eastlink Trail at Donvale when she noticed a bearded Caucasian man following her. She ran off and he gave chase before giving up. He was in his 50s and wearing lycra pants with a black cap and jacket. A former home and away star has opened up on a nightmare, telling a court of his shock after a stranger took over his identity online and lured victims into fake relationships. Lincoln Lewis was giving evidence as the convicted stalker fought to overturn her prison sentence.
Scared and rattled. That's how home and away heartthrob Lincoln Lewis felt when he first learned someone was claiming to be him online. Lydia Abdelmalek using the star's images and voice recordings to lure unsuspecting women into fake relationships.
Do you have anything to say?
Abdelmalek is appealing her 2-year, 8-month sentence and conviction. The man she impersonated today called to give evidence. Lewis telling the county court Abdelmalek gave out his home address. One of the women, believing they were in a relationship, visited his family home. She messaged a person she thought was the actor, saying, "I'm here, do you want me to come and see you?" And the person wrote back, "I'm not here, you can't come in." One victim was a flight attendant. Her colleagues approached Lewis on several flights, saying they knew his girlfriend. Lewis also told the court he'd been approached by a man in Bali who believed the pair were mates. The actor had to tell the man he had no idea who he was. He looked me in the eye and said, "Brother, it's me." He said, "We've been mates for a couple of months now." I said, "Mate, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." The hearing continues tomorrow. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
The Prime Minister has arrived back from the US, flying straight into renewed rumblings within the coalition over climate policy. Scott Morrison is now even considering pulling out of a global climate conference planned for later this year.
Home from the United States and back to reality. The Prime Minister facing rising temperatures in his government over climate change.
Net zero is about as silly as zero COVID.
But Scott Morrison insists he will soon have a plan to get there by 2050.
It's about how, not just by when.
But convincing his coalition partners won't be easy.
We want prudence and logic
and not sort of arbitrary, glossy terms.
While Barnaby Joyce is open to transitioning to net zero, a vocal and active minority of his National Party colleagues are openly against it, worried regional communities will suffer.
We've taken the bill and we've had to bear it on behalf of the Australian public for so long. It's time now to square the ledger.
The heat, not just from within government. A group of 70 former diplomats has written to the Prime Minister, warning without a commitment to a time-bound target, no one will believe that we are serious about pulling our weight on reducing emissions.
It's an issue that affects the future for our children and grandchildren.
And time is running out for Scott Morrison. He has just 5 weeks to unite the coalition if he intends to unveil Australia's new emissions reduction plan before a global climate conference in Glasgow. Although he still hasn't decided if he'll go to the summit himself.
The reason he's refusing to attend is that he knows he'll be laughed out of the room.
Rob Scott, 7 News.
The triumphant Melbourne Football Club is planning how to celebrate its premiership glory with fans back home. It'll have to wait until Victoria is out of lockdown as the party continues